Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's video around ACA, Affordable Care Act. My name is Terry Heley, and I'm an escalation engineer on the Microsoft Dynamics GP product team. I'm familiar with probably a lot of you, and today I thought we'd do a quick video of how we set up ACA in Microsoft Dynamics GP and talk about some tips around ACA. So every year I think about this, and ACA started in 2015. I remember going to GPUG that first year and talking to you about the 1095Cs and how we're going to track it in GP, and all of us were learning these new forms. That was back in 2015, and here it is 2022, and these forms are still here. And we've gotten to know and love them, and we've all learned from them, so they've gotten easier. But I still get many people asking me, hey, I want to start tracking ACA. How do I do it in the system? And so I thought I'd do a quick video that comes with a slide deck of some training around ACA. So I did update all the documentation out on our doc site to include an ACA section for you. And the link is off of this slide deck as well. So you have documentation for ACA and what you need to do. Also, every year we release a blog specific to ACA in our year-end blog series. So I have linked all of them in the slide deck for you. So if you're new to ACA, you can go through and review some of these. 2021 still has some tips in it. I covered changes. Do you need to install the year-end update? What is in there? Just kind of things that we run into at year-end. So I did link them all up within the documentation for you, so it's in one place. So ACA in Dynamics GP. So I'm just going to flip over into, I have the product up here, and I'm going to show you that the user date is really important. So down here on the left bottom, you can see I'm at 1/1/2023, and that is important when we use ACA. It is tracked in human resources. So if I go in under my cards and choose health insurance, I'll pull up my ACA employee I got set up here. We didn't use benefit start date or benefit begin dates for tracking ACA just because I could have my benefits start in June, but maybe my ACA code should be in May. So that is why we're tracking it based on the GP user date. So as I make changes to my employee benefit records, it's all storing it in a table. So you can see here, I now pulled up SQL. This is more for the technical people, but we track it in two tables, the 904 and the 905 throughout the year. So as I make changes to my employee independence, we are tracking it in this table. Then when we create the year-end wage file, we go and accumulate all this data and put it into one line to print on the 1095 for you, for my employees and dependents. And I have detail on those table listings in the slide deck as well. But we're using it off of the GP user date. So it's important that if I make a change to my employee ACA on, let's say, February 1st, I make a change on February 15th, and I make a change on February 28th. When we accumulate the year-end wage file, we're going to take the last dated change for that employee, which would have been February 28th. And then we keep it month by month on that code until it sees a change on that employee again. So that's how we track ACA. You can see I have looking glasses here. These codes typically change yearly. They're adding codes in here. So this is line 14, line 16, and then the lowest cost premium. And these can default in from the setup. The lowest cost premium is not typically the lowest cost premium for your employee on the plan they chose, but what was the lowest cost premium for the coverage you offered them? So usually this is the same amount for all your employees. And if your coverage plan changes in July or October and it goes up, you may see your 1095 print a certain amount from, let's say, January through September, and then it goes up in October. and that's because you rolled down a change. So that's the lowest cost premium of coverage you offered your employees, is what that field is. These same fields are in the setup table and can be rolled down as well. So we track it by user date. We have the ability to print the complete form with lines. So you don't need to order any forms with ACA. It's all included. It's typically required to install the year-end update or the January hotfix, depending when the IRS releases their changes. But usually they've had ACA form changes every year. Again, if you're, like my accountant just kind of pushes that form to the side, I don't think they're going to really turn you in if you don't have the right instructions on the back of it. And if that's all that changed, that's up to you. But typically we do release an update every year with changes. We do require human resources to track this. So you could tell I was in an HR window for benefit tracking. So we do require human resources to track this information. We don't use the look back periods, and we also don't do electronic filing in GP. But Integrity Data and Green Shades have offered our customers low-cost options for electronic filing. So if you need to electronic file, you could reach out to them. They will pull it from our year-end tables and electronically file for you. That was Integrity Data, and Green Shades will both do that for you. So let's look at a little bit in deeper about these windows. So you can see here, I'm at the enrollment window, which I was in earlier for my employee and the fields that we use to track. Also, if you need to print your dependents on your 1095-C, in the dependent window, you can see here I have my employee and I have a dependent and it says covered. So it'll default in as covered, and you can mark it as not covered. If, let's say, Julie Smith goes off my plan in March, I would want to make sure my user date's in March, market is not covered, so then her ACA, it'll print correctly on the 1095 form for your dependents. We allow for year-end editing. So even though you might make changes throughout the year, you can edit on the fly at the year-end time. So we do, just like your W-2s, you can edit your 1095s at year-end. We print the complete form with the lines, which is nice. We talked about lowest cost premium, and we talked about how user date is key with these forms. Okay, let's look a little bit more about the covered all year and the year end. So I've been tracking ACA, and now I create my year end wage file. You can see here I have my year 2023, my ACA employee, and we have 1095-C and dependents down here. Those are the two fields that are related to ACA. If I click 1095-C, I then pop into this year-end window. So if we get cases even today and it'll say, yeah, I opened the edit 1095 window and it's all nuns, there's zeros data in here. That tells me you were not tracking ACA all year. So if you see no data in here, you weren't tracking it in HR at all. So if you've been tracking it, some type of data will come into this window. But if you want to, you can, key it all in, hammer it away, and get your 1095s out. If you recreate the year-end wage file, just like your W-2s, all this data will be gone when you recreate the year-end. This is my dependent window off of here, so all my dependents will print. If I'm covered all year, that box will mark for dependents, or it'll be by month, depending. We also add an option to add a dependent on the fly in that window, because we had people, especially at the beginning of ACA tracking, where they accidentally forgot a dependent. They didn't want to remove the entire year-end wage file just to add a dependent for the employee. So we added the add button that would add it on the fly for them, which was nice. And then all edits will be lost if we recreate the year-end. So ACA, one of the common things are printing of inactive employees. We hear it every year. I link off my blog. There is a SQL script that will fix your data and remove inactive people. But just to give you a little history with this and understand the why, when we create the year-end wage file just for W-2s, we include people that may not got paid this year, because Well, one for ACA, some people don't get paid and they still get an ACA form, a 1095. For W-2s, you may need to edit Terry's record. And if we didn't include her, for you to edit, or you accidentally wanted to add some wages to her and she wasn't paid there, whatever reason, we need to have them in the year-end wage file. So don't get alarmed when you're creating the year-end wage file and you're seeing all these inactive records getting accumulated. We just grab them to the file. We don't print them. Now with the 1095, what we started to do is, if an employee leaves your company, I would recommend you to go into that insurance code and on line 16, mark it as 2A. And a lot of customers aren't doing that, so when we go terminate an employee or inactivate their record, go to the health insurance and put line 16 as 2A. If at year-end time, when I create the year-end wage file, if I see an employee that is 2A for all 12 months, which means not employed during the month, if I see it for all 12 months, I'm not going to print a 1095 for them. And we do it at the time of the print. So that's how we coded it to help with this issue and who should not get a 1095. So again, if you terminate someone, you should go to their health insurance, line 16, mark it as 2A, not employed during the month. If I see 12 months, it won't print them. We still have scripts on the blogs and in this slide deck that look to, if I have employees that don't have wages, remove them from the year-end wage file for the 1095. That's another way as well, because we have many people that don't go do this 2A, but that's how we coded it to know that a 1095 should not print for them. So please add that into your process at your end time. All right, this is a busy slide, but it's a nice way that I want to talk about ACA and cover some things. So you can see here, I'm in the health insurance setup and I have a dental code. So when ACA first came out, we didn't have a good way to identify only my healthcare coverage should be ACA recordable. My dental is not, my vision is not. So if you're new to setting up ACA, you want to make sure that your dental plans, your vision plans, they all have none and none. Now, none is not in the looking glass. You just type it in, none and none. And that means it's not ACA recordable. If when we create the year-end wage file, we see plans such as this dental that are none and none, they will not print on the 1095s and they will not be used in employee data. So I recommend, if you haven't, most have by now, we implemented that a few years back, to put all of these as none and none. This would be something for if you're new to set up. Then for your health insurance codes, I would put a default in here of how you want them to typically default to your employee when you set up health insurance plans. What's your lowest cost premium and what code does most of your employees fall into, and default that in. Then as you assign health insurance to the employee, it will default in the correct ACA codes for you. If we look a little bit at the year-end wage file, so I'm in the print W-2 window. We added the employer plan start month. This was not required for many years, and then it started to get required. You can see here I have 07, and then the plan start month down here prints as 07. When we first implemented this field, we were using when it started for the employee, and everybody would have been different. For this employee, it would have printed like 04 for April, as an example. And as the IRS has redefined some of those instructions, it's really the plan start month when your company's plan starts. So everybody should be the same. So that's why we added it to this main window, and we don't allow editing of that field, and thus we added this drop down for you. So if my plan start month for my company is October, I should put a 10 in that window. And you can change that and print, and it'll print on all your 1095s. A few years back, we added employee age. If an employee doesn't have a birth date on their record, it's going to print goofy. But otherwise, we had a couple bugs and we fixed all that in the 2021 year end or fall release. So that's all working as it should be. The employer provided coverage. So if you're self-insured, right up here, we have a box to mark if you're self-insured, and that means your dependents print. We also fixed some changes around that where if I don't have that marked, less of the instructions print. So we're saving some trees in that way because we have a lot of forms that are printing with these 1095. So if you need your dependents to print, mark the employer provided self-insurance, and then your dependents will print. We also added masking of SSN. So it'll mask for your W-2s and your 1095s right down here with this checkbox on your SSN. The all 12 months field, we do not use that field for employees. It's not required to. A lot of our customers like to see this as well for tracking. And we do use it though for the dependents, all 12 months. Just to show you, looking at this employee, it's not the best example, but you can see my premium was $67.88, lowest cost premium in May. I must have changed my user date to July and I flipped it to 88 cents. So then July on, I had a little gap in there, but it's printing 88 cents. So those again are based on my user date and when I'm making changes to my records. So the table information, as we looked at, your employee and dependents, as you're making changes to your records, are in the 904 and the 905. Now that we have it set up, I really don't look at those records much anymore, nor manipulate data in them. It's just automatically tracking in that table for me. And then I create my year-end wage file. And that is in the 110 and the 111. And so maybe at year-end time, if someone calls me and we want to make a mass change, I'm probably going to do it in the year-end tables versus back here in these tracking tables. Then we talk about what we did wrong over the year, how we can better track it. Another thing I'd recommend if you're fairly new to ACA, create that year-end wage file in March. Let's verify our ACA data and make sure it's okay. Don't wait till December or January and then find out I've been doing it wrong all year. I haven't been tracking it. Create that year-end wage file like we do for 941s and verify our data in March or maybe June. Then you know, hey, I'm tracking, these forms look great. And come December, you're going to have a lot less work to do because you're doing it up front as your employees leave and make changes. With that, our video is done for ACA. I want to thank all our customers and partners for using our product and continuing to use ACA tracking in Dynamics GP. I have linked to our product suggestion database out here. This is where we grab our suggestions for our next release. Go take a peruse out there, vote on some, enter your own as well. Again, thank you.